Hello everyone, my name is Ray, also known as Meatloaf Man, also known as Moonray, also known as Mona Artemis. If you're a longtime follower of the channel, hey, welcome back. Good to see you guys again. And if you're just finding me for the first time, welcome aboard. Some of you might be familiar with me as the showrunner of Crossover X, or a writer for Organization XVX. Some of you might know me as the writer of Timmy vs. Twilight. You might even just know me by name as someone in the Death Battle fan community. Regardless of how you know me, it's good to have you all here. In this video, I'm going to be pitching and presenting a concept for a brand new Versus show, one that technically already exists, albeit not in video form, and something that I've kinda have been wanting to make a reality since, well, 2013 I wanna say. I wasn't originally going to go forward with this as a real thing, but honestly, after years of helping run other Versus shows and seeing others step up with their own takes and idea in the indie Versus scene, I decided to throw my hat in the ring and give this a shot, especially with Crossover X currently in sleep mode as of writing this. Folks, I would like to once again present to you, or introduce you to, the Gauntlet. If you're familiar with what this is already, then not much more needs to be said, though for those unaware, the Gauntlet is a written Versus project created by me that is inspired by the likes of Death Battle as well as many other Versus shows I've come to enjoy, or even be a part of over the years. Early on, it was created specifically to give sanctuary to the aforementioned Timmy vs. Twilight, a passion project that I had been developing for several years. Once released, it was met with overwhelmingly positive reception, something I am still very thankful for to this day. Naturally, the next step will be to produce more written Versus fights, but I decided to take a break from the Gauntlet to focus on other things I had going on. In said time, I thought about how I originally wanted to make the Gauntlet into an actual full-on YouTube series, and pondered if it would still be possible. See, a well put together Versus show is a bit more difficult to produce than the average viewer may realize. Depending on the scope of the project, various factors have to be considered, from budgeting to time management, contracting others to help with production. Even motivation can play a role if such a show is purely built on passion. It's for these reasons that Timmy vs. Twilight could never have been realized as a full animated production. It would have been a huge costly undertaking that would have taken years to produce, and frankly with how passionate I was with the project, I didn't want to scale back my ideas, which is why I chose for it to be a written project with artistic visual inserts of course. That being said, after Timmy vs. Twilight, it was always my intention to scale back the scope of these fights in order to ensure swift release times, as well as to keep my sanity and health in check. With the new direction the project was already headed in, it would make sense to at least give this concept a try. With that being said, here's how the Gauntlet would work. Like with the written edition, the show would follow similar rules to that of your average researched Versus show. In particular, I would look to Crossover X's Battle Royale for reference, as the guidelines of the Gauntlet would more or less mirror that. Albeit, because it is my own personal show, there are traditional standards that are considered somewhat flexible with the Gauntlet. These would vary from episode to episode, for example certain matchups putting focus exclusively on specific iterations of certain characters as opposed to composites or main canon versions. Or perhaps a matchup not even involving actual combat at all. Variety is the spice of life after all. Though I would also like to think this would help lead to more unique match ideas. In general, I would want the Gauntlet to mostly consist of ideas that I like or I think are cool, as opposed to being populated with only popular ideas. Death Battle's got all the big time matches covered anyway. The format would follow your standard Versus show formula, covering a character's background, arsenal, abilities, feats, and faults. This would then lead into a hypothetical fight scenario, followed by the concluding results. The show would feature two primary hosts, Ace Valerie and Lance Arias, two longtime friends who have a lot more going on than the audience knows. There would be plans to expand upon this, introducing new characters and plot points along the way. For now though, all you need to know is that both are in possession of a mysterious, supernatural book that is capable of creating and visualizing any story based on the information put into it. There's a greater purpose to its existence, but as far as we know now, both hosts utilize this book's special powers to determine who among many of their favorite fictional characters can claim victory in story-based confrontations. It also seems like the book itself never runs out of pages, despite it always looking the same, so all the more reason to continue using it. I'd like to have the hosts make some kind of physical appearance during the show like Wiz and Boomstick themselves do in modern episodes, though it's important to keep in mind that I am just one person, so having them be fully animated is off the table. Though representing them through drawn avatars that move around is definitely something I can see being implemented, kind of like how Epithet Erase does it. Other versus shows have already been doing this for a while, so I can see this working. Speaking of animation, you're probably wondering how the fight segments would work. Well, like I said, I wouldn't count on seeing something on the level of Death Battle or even Battle Royale, since I don't really have the budget, means, or skill to make something comparable to either show. Otherwise, I would have probably made the Gauntlet a show a long time ago. And while I do have my connections to certain individuals involved with animating on different Versus shows, they're all very busy people that I respect a lot, and I'd rather not be that guy. That's not to say animation would ever be off the table, though I'm just letting you guys know at the same time it's not feasible, and I'm hoping that won't necessarily turn people away from the show for that reason. What I do have in mind, however, is featuring a full-on narrative with voiceovers, sort of in the style of a radio play, or I guess an audiobook in this case. If you've ever seen the show Fictional Fisticuffs by my friend Ribbit Theater or Versus Universe by Sky T, you'll probably have an idea of what I'm talking about. Out of respect for these shows, I would like to make an effort to differentiate how the Gauntlet approaches this segment, so you might end up seeing a mix of different things throughout. Notably, frames of art that represent what is being described by the narrator. There's even opportunity for expanding on how the story segment can be represented in the future. Animation may not be possible now, but it's definitely not off the table entirely should the budget allow for it in the future. Though I would still expect for it to be more limited in appearance. I even pondered the idea of motion comic-like animations, which would definitely match the motif of these fights all being told from a magical storybook. In general, sticking to the style of storytelling would help the show in the long run. It would allow for more characters that don't have resources available to still make appearances on the show, as well as ensure that all segments of an episode can get done due to less complications. As far as match selections go, like I mentioned before, a lot of them will end up being ideas I think are fun or interesting enough to look into. I would generally like to stay away from more popular ideas or matchups that have either already been covered by some of the more prominent and relevant Versus shows, or are very likely to pop up on there anyway. This obviously won't always be the case, as there are some popular ideas I wouldn't mind writing my own take on, but for the most part, I want to keep things generally fresh. To make all this possible, I will need some help. Because this project is a startup, a lot of the stuff I'll be commissioning is going to be coming out of my pocket. To be frank with you guys, I don't make too much money at my current job, especially with all the bills that I have that need to be paid monthly. So I am in consideration of opening up a new Patreon as well as a Ko-fi page. If you believe in this project or enjoy my works in general and you don't mind sparing a little something to help cover costs, it'd be greatly appreciated, and I'd be more than willing to have your names featured in the end credits of each episode for however long you support the show. Ace and Lance are going to need some voices, so at some point I will have to open up a casting call to see who can fulfill their roles. I don't imagine their voices sounding outlandish given they're just two dudes, but I do have specific sounding voices for them in mind, so I'm hoping I can find the right actors for the job. And without spoiling things, I will also have to cast one more voice for at least one more future character, at least if this goes off without a hitch. As far as writers go, with an exception or two, I am for now comfortable with filling in this role myself, as a lot of the matches I want to write are ideas I either like or came up with on my own, though it definitely wouldn't hurt to have a co-writer helping out with scripts and keeping things in check too. I also have a couple ideas in mind for who I'd like to reach out to as far as editors, artists, potential animators, and researchers are concerned. So if you're a close friend of mine, don't be surprised to see me drop into your DMs in the near future. Still, there is a part of me that is considering keeping the door open for others to reach out. Later on in time, I might release a Google form application for anyone who would like to contribute their skills towards the Gauntlet. I'll talk more about this sometime down the road, but for now, know that I am considering this as an option. Either way, this is still mostly a personal project, so while I am going to be reaching out for collaborations, don't expect this to be a replacement for Battle Royale or something on that level. This will purely just be fun and passion on my end of things, as well as an excuse to practice my writing and drawing skills. And I honestly hope you guys end up enjoying what's to come from it. One more thing I want to make clear is that at this time, the Gauntlet will not be accepting ideas for future matches. A lot of you are probably going to disregard this anyway, but please don't spam your laundry list of match ideas in the comments for this or any other video of mine. I will not be taking them into consideration. I have considered the possibility of opening up another Google form in the future for the purposes of gathering suggestions, but just know I'm not a machine, and I'm also not going to be interested in every fictional character or versus matchup out there. At most, you'll probably see me post on social media about characters I'm interested in using for the future, with the intent of seeking out an opponent for them. So if you want to contribute, feel free to shoot your shot then. Just keep in mind your suggestion is not guaranteed to happen. All that being said, what's first on the list? Some of you might already know what's to come, but for those that aren't already aware, check out who's stepping into the next chapter of the Gauntlet. Street Fighter's Wandering World Warrior, Ryu, faces the honorable leader of the Ninja Turtles, Leonardo. This is the match I've been interested in writing for a long time, and it's probably appropriate that they're headlining the new beginning of this series. And what better coincidental timing with all the collaborations they've only now started doing as of late. Look forward to their duel when it arrives sometime in 2024? I don't like promising release dates when something clearly isn't anywhere near ready to go, even if it's just a year. But we'll see what happens. Like always, stick to my social media for updates as well as more concrete release schedules. Thank you guys for watching all the way through to the end. I'm hoping you guys like my ideas and that this little project of mine can get off the ground with little hiccups. Even if Ryu vs Leo ends up being the only episode made, I'll at least be satisfied knowing I gave this a shot, and that people put their support in it. Definitely let me know what you guys think in the comments. It'd be nice to hear some feedback or encouragement. Take care of yourselves, everyone, and until we meet again, this is Ray, also known as Meatloaf Man, signing out.